morning, everybody. Welcome to the session to understand the role that apprenticeship play in creating talent. Uh, there's a gentleman called Gary S. Becker. He's a Nobel laureate. In the year 1962, he got his Nobel Prize in the area of people supply chain. And his theory suggested that employers cannot create their own people. They always rely externally to seek help to make the hires rather than creating in-house. As per the occupation standards, uh, about 90% of the jobs in the market need skills and just about 10% of the knowledge. On the contrary, the people who are graduating, 90% of them have knowledge or qualification, but very minimal skill. And that kind of snowballs into other problems related to hiring, productivity, the soaring compensations, the fear of losing people to competition, and as a matter of fact, attrition. Solution or an answer. Let's try to find this in today's session. We have with us Ms. Nivedita Nanda, who is the head of HR for Kaya Limited. We've got Mr. Pradeep Bhosekar with us. He's the general manager and head of learning and development with Godrej and Boyce. And we have Captain Parth Samai, who's the senior VP and group HR head of AGS Transact Technologies Limited. Welcome, all of you. Captain Parth, you're on mute.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sumit, having us here in the webinar.
Well, the pleasure is going to be all mine. Let's get started. And my very first question to all of you is that there's a recent study which was conducted and that suggested that about 50% of the employers finding skill the most challenging aspect in hiring. And post-COVID, this has even got aggravated. What has been your experience in finding the right skill set when you are hiring your potential employees? So, Nivedita, let's hear it from you first.
Okay. I think this COVID-19 has changed our prospect about how we work, how we conduct ourselves, how do we, in fact, exercise, in terms of, how it's changed our prospect towards work. So work from home is one thing which has really made us feel how technology is important, but nevertheless, when you are into retail, when you're into essential services, when you are into manufacturing, one has to be there in the front, where actually you need a lot of skilling, and COVID has definitely hit us badly, our business. In fact, March and April, we just closed ourselves because we are very people-centric. We didn't want our people to get, and we have a lot of, customers coming into our clinics. We also saw customer coming in also, stop because people, when we started interacting with the customer, they were also equally scared to come. So April month, we were wondering how to operate, but believe me, from May, we opened up all our clinics because we have doctors. So we realized maybe we'll be able to help our customers in helping in COVID. Believe me, we did that because we all have MDs in our clinics. But the problem is we have almost 80% are, the population ladies. So because of the COVID, we have huge absenteeism we had in our clinics, huge absenteeism. And we didn't know how to, few clinics we had to start. So we had a real, crunch of people. We realized the customers started coming in, but employees are not coming to the clinic. It was a huge challenge, in fact, Sumit, to manage this. And what we started doing is we had to get people, and ours is extremely skill-based. We need our people have to be, skilled, need to know the basic, how to operate machines, how to. Tough time, Sumit, but somehow we managed. A lot of old people we connected with. We started going to the colleges. So people, during summer vacation they were at home. So can we get them? And we got them skilled through initially 15 days through webinars like what we are doing, and then we got to the clinics. Now few of them are getting trained in the clinics along with they're helping the doctors. So tough time, but COVID taught us many things, how to so-called uncertainty or VUCA, we keep talking, and it's a real time of uncertainty, but it taught us how to be agile, how to be collaborative, and how to use technology to get the skill on the, on the front line need to be skilled. But it was a tough time, Sumit, for us.
Okay. So what about you, Mr. You're a pretty diversified group as such, but yes, largely mostly manufacturing concentrated. What has been your experience in finding talent, when you are hiring for your organization?
As Nivedita has said, let us put it literally the world as they use that word, pre-COVID and now post-COVID. So it has literally, changed the entire perspective. It has changed the entire, as we call it, new normal and all that. But to build up the context, let me tell you that finding talent, especially in a manufacturing industry, and where again manufacturing process itself has undergone quite a lot of changes. Simply making our store well, which is people associate Godrej with store well, our cupboards. Storewell is so much now common that people call Storewell as a cupboard name. But let me tell you, Storewell is a brand name. Let me tell you that it's a trademark. Storewell, Storwell. But people associate Storewell means cupboard. So that kind of brand equity is there. But the point I'm making that simple sheet metal cupboard, the machinery what we are using has a total undergone change. Earlier, there used to be mechanically operated press brakes and those kind of machines. They are all now CNC operated machines. The point I'm making, the simple machine operators, which is the, in a way, kind of lowermost person in a manufacturing hierarchy. Then we have line supervisors, then we have design engineers, purchase engineers, and so on. So those are engineers. Even for operator level, finding talent earlier was a major challenge. And of course, post-COVID, there was lockdown. Lockdown continues to be, at various, stages in various states. So that has added to further complexity. We have manufacturing location in 6 states: Uttarakhand, UP, Gujarat, Bombay, of course, is our major base. Chennai, we are in Chennai. We are in Goa. So we are in 6 states now. So there are huge challenges post-COVID of finding the right talent. But that is second part. The first part is even pre-COVID, where things were otherwise so-called normal, but finding the right talent was always a challenge, especially when the manufacturing process is undergoing change, as I was telling you. And therefore, the solution lies in creating in-house and the training, apprenticeships. That was the answer we were, all working on, and we were making good use of that. But yes, things have become more complex and I will say difficult post-COVID, no doubt.
Definitely, sir. Definitely. Captain Parth, you've been a very unique space that you operate, which is cash logistics and cash logistics management, I would say that. What has been your challenges in hiring, and especially considering that you have a diversified role in your organization? What are kind of challenges that you have been facing and how it has impacted post-COVID or during the COVID time?
Well. So the sentence I'm going to make is really going to be a little, I can safely say, thoda sa disturbing, because what Nivedita said and what Pradeep said, it's very contrary. And we have been into a business, or we are into a business which always required, or which had huge amount of appetite for manpower, and manpower who are in the bracket of say 15 to 20,000 per month in hand, of course. Now this has we designed it in such a blocked manner that we always have a plan for the next 6 months to refill those, because we did so much of data crunching, how the trend analysis would work good for us as far as cities are concerned, regions are concerned. And apprentice program really worked wonders for us, and it gave us total path and entire visibility for the next 6 months or 1 year, how it is going to look for us. Hence, for us or for me, it has never been a new normal. Like it has always been a normal For me today also it's a normal day. Yes, I'm not in the office today for some reasons, but yes, I we go to office. We have been going to office. My MD comes to office every day. Every day, he has not even missed a single day. So where I'm coming from is the business we are into is a public business, and we are serving the public. We are serving the nation, and filling up and taking care of 1 lakh ATMs in the country across regions, across territories, tier 1, 2, 3, 4, cities, towns, villages. It is not easy. It is tough. Yes. Coming back to the discussion that we are having, the apprentice program and the kind of trainees we have has really given us the strength to leverage on whatever is coming our way and taking the business on the stride, because we know that in on Monday I will have 34 people joining.
Mhm.
So that is a confidence I have, and that is a confidence I can give back to the business, that go ahead and take up the business, whatever is coming. Don't worry about manpower, it's going to come. And the fundamentals that the apprentice program lays down, it goes very well for this, entire manpower and this employment to sustain and accept this particular program. That is from my side, Sumit.
Sure, sure. Nivedita, you mentioned that you have approach of collaboration is what you have taken at this juncture, where you are kind of meeting your business requirement. What are the other initiatives that you are taking when it comes to hiring your people, and how are you ensuring that you have the regular people available, and there's a minimal disruption to the business?
You're on mute, Nivedita. You're on mute.
You would like to hear the post-COVID?
Yeah,
Sumit? Okay.
that's right.
As I told you, we started opening, and in fact, we had a lot of issue in the smaller towns, okay, where we have single clinics. See, a metro like this, we have 27, 28 clinics. We are able to manage according to the customers coming in. So we see how many appointments have been booked. We move people from one place to another. We never had our own vehicles. We started hiring our vehicles so that people can be moved. We do not want them to move in public transport because we're dealing with customers. But in smaller towns, we had huge problem, Sumit. So there, the clinics, or a clinic which is a little far, let's say Noida, I have a clinic of, 3-story building clinic. So you can imagine the kind of manpower we require. We have almost 21 rooms in that clinic. And Noida, being Noida, there is no, the communication, the commuting is a problem. So what immediately we did is we got into those so-called gig culture, which maybe one was thinking in 2025, maybe one will get into this project-based work. But we got into that. We got a lot of people who are sitting at home but want to do something. A lot of people lost their jobs, right? So we approached through our contacts, and can you come? So we had to skill them, but it was a challenge. Of course, what we did is in the clinics we created 2-3 groups, where one group will come for 15 days, the group will go back, and the other group. So it is a lot of strategic thought how to plan the manpower in the clinics we had to do. Also, what we did is we did a lot of employee-centric stuff, so that people feel connected with us. We had a lot of new initiatives we launched during this COVID, which are very people friendly. We did a lot of product. We started selling a lot of product. Our product sale in e-commerce actually went higher because we give a lot of importance to that than services. We have 2 kinds of business. So luckily what happened is our cash flow didn't get affected, because our middle list started operating really good. And if you ask me today, we are doing the business what we had done last year, August, in Midlist. Yeah, Midlist has opened for us. So we got the cash flow. So we started doing how do we maintain the people whom we have, and we gave them a little comfort level. We, in fact, initiated good policies, like we said, okay, you can take leave for if you have small children, you can have 4 more days leave, if you have old parents, you can take 4 days because they needed the health care. So people realized we are with the families, and we involved a lot of mental health programs with the families. As I told you in my previous conversation that we have ladies with us, the mental health was a big problem because they had to work at home. They had to manage the creches are, closed. The children are at home. The schools are closed. So mental health was one thing we really tried to be connected. Whatever the issues they used to have, our people got. And thanks to technology today, we could able to do, lot of online courses, connecting with the people, keeping their moral high, And I had one thing to my people, guys, we cannot allow the ship to shrink because I have skilled people. If I lose one person, I'm losing 3 months salary because I'm
For the
training for
production.
3 months.
That's right. Absolutely.
If I lose one person, it's to get one more person, I'll take 3 more months. And doctors, being having MD, it is difficult to get them in the market. And government said, if you are a MD, please come to the government hospitals. A lot of our doctors went to the government hospitals. So they have to come, get quarantine, then come to the clinic. It was, but thanks to technology, we really used our HRMS, our online, knowing that how many people are there on field, managing them and getting, online reports. I think the team did a wonderful job but skilling is something I realized how important it is during this COVID, which I was taking my training team for granted, So
Fantastic. I think we'll definitely dwell upon that as aspect of its scaling. But yeah, it's very good to hear that, how did you remodel your business,
yeah.
empathizing and, maintain the transparency and the communication with your people. And definitely the leveraging the technology aspect of it.
Yeah.
So wonderful. Yeah. Mr. Bhosekar, you mentioned that hiring has been a challenge and, it has only further aggravated now. Could you just elaborate what are the initiatives your organization has taken to ensure that you have the talent availability at any point of time, sir?
Yes, we were also closed down during the initial period of lockdown, the countrywide lockdown, where everybody was, kind of worried and let us not have scared. So, April, May, those are the 2 months we were closed down. Okay, and then slowly, in fact, May itself, we had to open some of the operations because, we are kind of proud to say that BNC wanted, ventilators, ICU ventilators were required. And this ventilator required certain critical component which required machining and all that. And they knew that Godrej had got machining facility. So they gave us special permission with taking due precaution for COVID and all that. So we needed these CNC machine operators right in May, which was, in the, we will say the COVID was in full blast. And then of course, June, July, it further went on opening up. And of course, today we are in August. The point I'm making, people were needed. The workers, permanent workers were more or less around, where they are staying currently in Bombay and outside Mumbai limits, like Dombivli, Kalyan, Karjat, and those kind of places. And especially the trainees class, the apprentices class, some of our contract workmen, people who taken on contract, they have all kind of left and gone to their native places. All kinds of problems were there. So when the operations restarted in kind of phases, we had a huge challenge how to call these people back, give them a lot of incentives and all that. We did that, and wherever there were challenges, we had to then go for talent acquisition. We had to go for recruitment. So we did start recruitment as well. And yes, post-COVID, the compensation packages have undergone change, especially the logistics, which was hitherto not arranged at all, like arranging buses. We are now having some 80 plus buses coming to Vikhroli premises from far-flung areas like Vasai, Virar. I'm talking about Bombay scenario, because I'm talking about Bombay. The similar thing was replicated in our Chennai plant and our Goa plant and so on. the point where I'm making is a lot of incentives had to be put in place to call back the existing people, point number one. And for talent acquisition, a lot of stops in terms of arranging accommodation. We had to literally, fortunately, we have a residential colony available, and that came handy when we recruited people and then offered them a shared accommodation with, of course, due precaution and all that. So recruitment has to be with a new normal, with a totally different kind of package, and lot of logistics related, extra softs to be given. And simultaneously, we, unleashed a very, rigorous training program for the people wherever there were gaps needed, certain very highly skilled job like welding and machine operations. So yeah, it was a, we were full blast, I will say, the recruitment team and the training team. In early June, complete throughout the June, July, it further intensified, and of course in August, we are now almost normal. I'm talking about the production side, manufacturing side. Yes, certain
Fantastic.
applications like marketing, design, they are still work from home, but production, training, recruitment, we are all full blast. Yes, it has been a very, very tough call. Uh, One simple thing is you have to, I'll say, open up your purse string as they call it, to attract the talent, and simultaneously arrange training programs. So that has been the twin strategy to attract the new talent, and wherever there is a gap in the talent, yes, arrange training program. Because as they say, finally the show must go on.
Must
So
go on. Absolutely. Absolutely. So I think what you basically relied on is giving more facilities to the people, the
yes,
benefits to the people, incentives to the people to show up for the work.
absolutely, absolutely. And incentive including
Awesome.
accommodation. We have to even arrange
Accommodation, of course.
because
Yes,
many
yes,
of
yes.
us came from outside Bombay. Many from came
Yeah.
outside Bombay. So a lot of it involves cost. Cost of production has gone up, no doubt. But
Mm-hmm.
sometimes there is a social angle to that, in the sense, like as I said, certain components were going straight to ICU beds, as I said, ventilator components and all that. So that is how our social angle came in there. We let us not look at exactly profit margin per se, but the let the products which are needed, they must go on. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. Captain Parth, you mentioned about apprenticeships, that how how apprenticeship has been supportive to you for your hiring staff. Would you want to elaborate on on your experience, and also help us understand how has your organization leveraged on apprenticeships?
Well, in the beginning, there was a lot of apprehension by the business teams that we would be getting freshers, and they would be fresh from the colleges and
Hello.
many places. There would be talent who are employable, but they are
Hello.
not trained or skilled. You know, so at that point in time, we had to we faced a lot of challenges. Then um,
Mhm.
when one business started taking, that is the CRA business, and I had blessings of Mr. Goel, who is our chairman and managing director, to go ahead with the new concept, and it was very bold. And
Yeah.
that made a lot of difference because they could see that the freshers who are being trained, they come without baggage, without any baggage, and they can be customized and custom trained, or the skills can be customized into them, and they can be more productive. In fact, they got more productive because they were doing exactly the way it is told to them, or the way they are trained to perform certain job. So the concept of jobs to be done by them was very much, very much defined and very much focused. Hence, it was definitely a journey in the last 3.5 4 years, how we have really gone from um, just 5 to 10 employees to 2,000 odd people now. Now, this particular program also in in the scheme of things that we have as of now. Like we have a lot of people, a lot of colleges in the country. I think, if I might not be accurate, but we flush around as a country about more than 1 million engineers every year. And if you take the diploma technical, it will go about 3 million. Now, if you have so many technical people and they are very much employable, but it is just that, as you rightly said, Sumit, the people have this concept that should we take them, should we not take them? They are not trained. But definitely, we all as an organization need to be conscious and very confident. Like Nivedita was telling that we really train people, we invest in training. So if we are so confident about our training, we will be very much confident in taking and absorbing them in this program, and that would definitely help, because for them the stipend that they get is straight in their hand. There are no deductions. Hence, it is a value proposition for them. It is a USP for them, right? So they feel that they are better off than the regular employees who get almost the same salary but with a deduction. Yeah. So it makes a lot of difference, and I think that can be leveraged very well among the youngsters, because youngsters, they want more money in hand, because they have various commitments other than their personal commitments, of course, and that is very much fulfilled. And if, as an organization, strategically, if you plan it that in so many months, as per the government norms, I take this much percentage in apprentice program and train them, groom them. I'm sure, I'm telling from my experience, we are having about 40 to 50% rollover. When I say rollover, they go to the next level. Like from
Okay.
an apprentice program, they are graduated to on rolls, and that is the career progression I'm giving them. So at today's, in last year, I'm telling you, 545 apprentices were taken on roles of the company. That is exact data I'm sharing, and this is an encouragement. My organization supports me in it. My system supports me, and there is a formal document to the career progression policy of an apprentice, and that document is shared with that with him or her when he or she joins, and that is an encouragement document for them to walk the path of 2 years program, where they feel that if I am trained and I'm in the top in the order of merit, I'll be taken and absorbed, and that
That's,
is in itself is a bonus or a reward.
that's amazing. And I mean, your organization has definitely set the precedence for apprenticeship in the industry. You've been the pioneers in doing apprenticeships. You just mentioned, Captain Parth, that for the youngsters, it's the more cash in hand is more exciting for them. But I would just like to take another opinion of yours, that if you were to rate between the two options, which is they find they're building the capabilities and it enhances their career, or it's the cash in hand, which would be you think is valued more by the youth today?
Well, on a very, very practical note, when we go to these, I will exactly define tier 3, 4, 5 colleges, or 4, 5, 6 colleges of engineering, where brands do not go. Okay. And brands, when I say brand, they are big brands. Okay. For them, getting placed in itself is a victory, number one. Right. Second, is when we give the presentation and say, hey, you know what, this is the job description and this is the career progression, the document I was talking about. And I have been bold enough to tell my talent team that when you go to the campuses, please give it as a handout, that this is your career progression policy, this is the JD. So I am not hiding anything, right? So he has, I'm answering to both your questions. Now he has money that he can see on the paper, then he can see a career progression that in the next 2 years, if I'm in the merit, I go on on the roles of the organization. But if I don't even get on the merit, I have 2 years of skilled experience which I can flash in my resume. Yeah? So that is what I look at, and that is what I have experienced. Rather, my talent team has experienced, even the business team has experienced, because 80% of the manpower that I have in apprentice are with the business. Like in my team, like I have MBAs who are from good B schools. They are taken on apprentice
As an
role.
apprentice. Oh,
And they
fantastic.
understand, because they are well educated, and they understand that I have zero experience, and they are going to train me on HR, and we have a program for them. 3 months in talent, 3 months in operation, 3 months in analytics, and 3 months in statutory compliance. So all gamut of HR is covered. And exactly after 1 year, they are tested on what they have learned, and they are put on the roles. Unlike the field people, they take a bit of time, because there is a lot of other thing that is involved in putting them on the roles of the company.
So definitely it's a word of mouth which has helped you for one depart from one section or one business entity to the other. That's how the adoption has happened. And I think everybody today has the proof of pudding. So
Absolutely. It was very infectious. Very, very infectious.
Very nice. Very nice. Mr. Bhosekar, your organization has traditionally been doing apprenticeships. In fact, you are considered as one of the largest deployers of apprenticeship. Please help us understand how your organization has leveraged on the whole aspect of apprenticeship, sir.
No, I would put it, apprenticeship definitely is a very, very important pipeline for our operations. There is no doubt. And I kind of would like to kind of announce and say that we are the second largest recruiter of apprentices in the country.
That's right.
When I say apprentices, I am referring to trade apprentices, which are ITI pass outs specifically. So we are the second largest recruiter, 700 plus to be precise, every year. So we do take that kind of number at Vikroli establishment alone. Chennai numbers are different, Gujarat numbers are different, Uttarakhand numbers are different, and Pune. In Maharashtra itself, we have two major factories, Bombay, and now Pune, we have a major base near Pune. The point I'm making, apprenticeship, yes, is very dear to us, our way of working. And we have been recruiting people for the simple reason that for manufacturing operations, and especially I'm talking of post-COVID, there have been certain other challenges which are created. Well, let me take you slightly pre-COVID. And then, of course, we have to tweak that system post-COVID to overcome certain challenges. But to understand the entire ecosystem of apprenticeship, we will have to necessarily go pre-COVID. And I would definitely would like to say that apprenticeship is one of the most important channel for building skills. Of course, Nivedita said the same thing. I'm not saying something different. I am only would like to draw the attention that ITI route itself is not the only route, which of course traditionally we have been following, because that route was available to us. So it was a known route. But there are other routes created where from that route as well, organizations can recruit candidates as apprentices. In the sense they can be traditionally degree holders were always there, engineers, the diploma holders. And now what is added interestingly is graduates, the BAs, the BComs, the BScs, the BBAs, Bachelor of Business Administration, a whole lot of standard bachelor degree programs. These candidates also can be recruited now as apprentices. Via Sector Skill Council, we will have to do the training. Whether they complete the course offered by Sector Skill Council training partners, or they join as freshers. That word is freshers. They join as freshers directly organizations, and organizations tie up with the skilling institutions, and they become as outsourced BTCs, basic training providers, BTPs rather, as they are called, outsourced, because organizations may not have that kind of, I will say the patience or the propensity or the kind of, unnecessary, the kind of creating infrastructure to have their own BTC, basic training center. and they can leverage very much because the law allows now, the system allows, government has allowed outsourced BTP, basic training provider, and therefore that things are available for all kinds of these people via sector skill council or via freshers, and take them. So I will say apprenticeship is really now has become a very, very interesting, and I will say opened up in a very big way. And I would definitely expect our organizations who are not into this recruiting apprentices, those who are recruiting apprentices, for them, they should look at the various other channels open to them. As I said, non-engineering graduates or non-ITI graduates from the training partners of these sector skill councils. Newer
So you
channels,
definitely feel that.
my recruitment, I would request our recruitment heads to look at these newer avenues open, available for
So,
creating them. Yeah.
so you are saying that you've definitely seen that there has been an evolution
Yes.
uh, in the apprenticeship ecosystem and how it has become more wider and more
Absolutely. Wider.
approachable today.
Yes.
That's all.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the recruitment managers need to take note of this newer channel. See, the
Yeah.
traditional ones, ITI ones for worker class, the graduate engineers and diploma holders for traditionally technical jobs, those things are there, no doubt. But my very strong point I would like to make is through this forum to my recruitment friends is please go beyond that. Please go beyond ITI people. Please go beyond graduate engineers and diploma holders. Look at the other graduates and train them. Some industries like Kaya Skill or this thing, they may not need engineers. They may need graduates. Take them as fresher graduates, fresher apprentices rather, these graduates. Train them as per your requirement, and then make use of the apprenticeship schemes. And there is of course SNAPs available, where there is a reimbursement scheme also available and all that. So it's a very exciting and interesting field now. That is all I'm just repeating kind of.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Nivedita, coming to you, I know personally you have experienced, apprenticeships in your previous organization and in your career as well. What is your take on apprenticeship? And would also like to understand that currently your organization doesn't do apprenticeship, but however, they do invest a lot in skilling, right? So first of all, what's your personal opinion on apprenticeships? What has been your take on it? Why your organization had decided not to go for an apprenticeship? What are the reasons for it?
So first, let me talk about my experience. Your first question, that how I in my previous organization. So I was heading HR in one of the biggest retail organization prior to Kaya. 45,000 workforce. They are only frontliner. So that's a huge workforce one can think of. And it's a listed company. So every time you go to a board meeting, you'll be questioned about your as a HR and why the attrition is so high. The investor also will be look at, if the attrition is high, should we invest or shouldn't we invest? Why it is happening? Is the organization culture there's something wrong? But actually, that's not the fact. The fact is a person, in fact, yesterday I was discussing with Sumit, what happens is a youngster, when it comes to retail, the person has to stand for 8 to 10 hours. The girl or a boy, 18, 20-year-old, they are not, some of them come from very low strata of the society, little malnourished. Can they really sustain this kind of career? It's difficult. Okay, so what happens? People leave the organization with 3 months. They come and say, we cannot. So I personally used to speak to the boys or girls. What is the problem? Why are you leaving? Say, no, it's so difficult to stand, and even there's no customer. One has to, do stock taking. There one has to do, planogramming. So there's no place to sit. Actually, in retail shops, there is no place to sit. Okay, for the people who sell. So huge attrition. For 6 months. Then people come to know, no, this is a career, and retail is one of the best career. I can say that. You learn a lot of stuff, while working. So we tried, of course, with Team Lease, in fact, the program. So it was so overwhelming because let's understand what is apprenticeship. First is you're having a on-job training, and of course you're getting a stipend. You are not even if you're a fresher, and a good stipend. The take home, is good in hand. If you go to any other job, it is difficult. So because you have PF, gratuity, all these all these deductions, what Captain Park said, there's no deduction, you have a cash in hand. On top of it, you get some kind of certification. I think that is the program, true program in the sense, what is apprenticeship, okay? That's the meaning of the program. So when we started this, my attrition from 35 came down to 27%. I think it was a huge success for everyone in the organization. The store manager was happy, okay? Otherwise, the store manager will really, question the store HR, saying that what is happening, I need people, okay? So you have a clear career plan for people, okay? Saying that, yes, 6 months apprenticeship, then I used to have a management trainee after that, because the training program used to change after that. We used to teach them a lot of customer-centric program, which is online, and we used to have classroom trainings. So there is a huge career plan for the kid who comes in. And the entire organization was happy, saying that, yes, we have a lot of people who will stay with me next 2 years. And the moment you show them a career path, nobody wants to leave a job. Let's accept the fact. Of course, at that point of time, if you get a 500, more people will leave. But if you show them a right career path, they'll stick with you. You had a question, what is important? I feel the career path for some people who are genuine is important for them. They will say, okay, I can have a good career in one of the good organizations. So big believer on this. And of course, there is a huge return on investment, which I will talk about, Kaya. Why, what is the problem? I do not have that ROI from training today. Okay, but here you have a huge ROI. So question number 1, I hope I've answered. It's a very successful program. I will, all the participants who are, today attending this program, please try it out. It's beautiful. Your attrition is the biggest problem from any HR person. How many people you can train, okay? So nice. And I was very happy the new education policy when came out, saying that always I used to talk about this vocational training. Now they have included. Hopefully it gets implemented. And, India sees after 20 years, a huge lot of skilled people coming out, from the colleges. Okay, that's a very good initiative which has started now, which will start.
Sure.
Second, coming to Kaya, okay, we have here, the people have to come, they get a 3 months training. Those who are the front line doing the therapist, we call them therapist. What happens is, Sumit, why I have not gone, even if I'm a big believer, this includes a little bit of, first of all, education is one part. Second is, I need people who have worked in parlors, okay? They already come with little experience and the salary is high.
Okay.
So the problem for me is, if I get a fresher, my training becomes 4 months. And if I take people from a parlor, and a lot of like VLCC has training institute. Now Kaya is having their own training academies. In fact, during COVID, we launched a training academy. That's a new opportunity we saw, and we have launched 5 academies across the country. Paid courses. So that's COVID taught us how to reimagine our business. So what happens? I get trained people. I cannot afford to have freshers who come, and 4 months I invest with them. In fact, you'll be surprised. I joined 3 years back. First year when I came, I was speaking to my trainer, why can't you have an apprenticeship program, people coming in and do it? We tried, but it was so difficult to train those people, because a lot of science they teach, why the skin is like this. I sometimes I attend the training programs. I say, I'm not able to understand how you expect, the arts graduate to understand these scientific terms. So definitely it is a lot of who have worked in with doctors, we get, people, and nursing, of course, a lot of nurses we hire. In Middle East, all the therapists are nurses, because that is the mandatory thing for us. Here also we hire a lot of nurses. And nurses, the salary level is high, Sumit, in India. It's difficult to get people. So my ROI is not coming. That's the only thing why I couldn't go through the apprenticeship program. But I have a huge skill through building, happening. For me, I think that's, as a person, I'm happy. And also, if I talk about apprenticeship as a CSR angle, that's one thing, one can do. I have tied up with a lot of NGOs, okay? And so I have a separate program for them. Many of them do not come to Kaya because they are not that educated, but I have a special program going on. I've signed up with Salam Bombay. I've signed up with a lot of NGOs who those ladies come, and get trained with us, and they go from here. Few of them we observe, but not all of them. But one thing is there, skill is important. Skill is nothing to do with your qualification. You need a job, you need to be skilled. So the training during the work, I think you are a graduate or you are an ITI student, but what you learn while working cannot replace anything.
Sure.
I hope I answered your question, Sumit.
Yeah, so what I understand is it's not the apprenticeship, which is on-the-job training what you're doing, but otherwise you resort to more on the classroom learning or the classroom skilling is what your organization is leveraging.
We have 15 days we deploy them in the clinic.
Okay.
Then they all are employed with us, permanent employees. We take them as employed people.
I see. Okay.
Sumit, I find a lot of question and answers, people waiting. I see Q&A.
Yes, sir. So I think we'll just quickly wrap this up. I think in another 5 minutes, because I have one very, I would say very pertinent question here, which would be compelling for many organizations to take up apprenticeship. And what I need to hear from both you and Captain Parth is that, since both, your organizations have been doing apprenticeship for a fairly long time now, what are the visible outcomes that your organization have experienced?
No. If you ask me, my organization, Godrej and Boyce, apprenticeship is hugely successful. There is no doubt on that.
So what are the outcomes, if you were to look at some three major outcomes?
I get a skilled workforce ready. At the end of 1 year apprenticeship, the boys are learning on job. They are officially the apprentices under the Apprentices Act and all that. So accordingly, we all comply with that. There is stipend to be paid. All those kind of things, of course, we do comply. And the outcome, of course, is availability of skilled workforce to run my processes, to run my machines. And when I say process, means welding, be it painting, be it precision assembly, and inspections, and so on. So all this kind of trades in which I take these apprentices, and not only the ITI people which are at the worker level, at the operator level or fitters level, but even for diploma holders and graduate engineers, I take 200 plus of them. So even for doing my relatively higher echelon jobs, like purchase executives, like the production executives, like design executives, and so on. So for all these, doing the factory operations to run my factory, so that output is my various products, be it furniture, be it my process equipment, be it my vending machines. We are into that now. Whatever tables and chairs and whatever products you see from the Godrej brand, the entire pipeline has been the apprentices, from worker level right up to engineers level, and getting them at the apprentice level. The beautiful part about apprenticeship, they are freshers from their institutes. Whether he's an engineer, whether he's an ITI pass out, he's a fresher, and he's looking for a kind of a entry into the organization. And therefore, apprenticeship really helps me in getting them at relatively, I will say, kind of low cost. Nivedita talked of ROI, but I will say for me, the ROI for an apprenticeship program, I will peg it at very high, in the sense, getting directly skilled workforce. I mean, my production manager, would like to say, I need a skilled worker from day one, but that comes at a very high cost.
So it will be okay for me to summarize this, saying that for you, creating talent in-house is turning out to be far more cost effective as compared to acquiring talent externally.
Absolutely, no doubt that getting them via apprenticeship route at a relatively low cost, which is a stipend only, and then at the end of apprenticeship program, they are my skilled workforce, and they run my machines, they run my processes. So apprenticeship is hugely successful, no doubt. Fantastic. In my organization, yes.
Captain Parth, what has been your take? What would you want to highlight the visible outcomes of apprenticeship that your organization has experienced?
Quickly, number one is the availability of manpower. There is, like I told initially as well, there's a huge manpower available in the market, and it just needs to be tapped with a very open mind, with a very bold mind, and irrespective. In my case, we are not dealing in machines, so I don't really aspire to get engineer or ITI kind of stuff, but I can manage with even a BSc or a BA. That is number one. Number two, cost of acquisition is very low. Hence, my talent team leverages on that. Number three, we are a very young organization, and with apprentice program, we are growing younger by the day. Yeah, because we are pumping in more people who are young blood. And number four, which is very important, the morale of the entire workforce in the field is always very high because of the young blood running. Hence, the vehicle keeps running very smoothly and seamlessly. So,
So again, would you say that cost? I remember you were also mentioning something about the attrition uh, uh, yesterday.
yeah.
Something. Would you want to elaborate?
So I lost you. I'm sorry.
I'm saying you mentioned something about attrition as well.
Yeah, so the attrition has always been a challenge in our business. Like Nivedita's business, we also have a retail business, and there's a huge amount of people in the apprentice program in the retail business, and they churn out, and we have a churn even in our CRA business, but that has not been a deterrent because with the attrition that we have, it is very much programmed and it is very much structured. That if I know that every month I have a attrition of 12 to 15% in zone 1, zone 2, zone 3, and progressively going up to 28%. I know how to pump it up. I know how to channelize the manpower. So apprentice program really helps me keep the buffer ready, keep the pipeline ready, and if you have an entire vicious cycle of it, then the cycle helps me give the confidence to the business that you will not be hungry as far as manpower goes. You will always have adequate manpower coming from this channel to you and available to you.
Good. So interesting to hear all of your thoughts. I think we'll quickly we're running a little behind the schedule. So we will kind of take few questions quickly and wrap up the session. Let's look at the questions here. Yeah, so what are the key elements an organization consider while creating succession plan for apprentices? Would you want to take that, Captain Parth and Mr. Bhosekar, because I think you just mentioned something about that, how you prepare people for the next levels and you have an absorption rate as well. So what is how do you prepare the succession plan?
So we do have a career progression chart, and they are all apprentice that I have. They are reviewed every 3 months as a process, because there's a process document that is circulated to all the RMs. RMs here is reporting manager, and they after making an assessment in a scale of 1 to 5, they get back to us with a score. That score is communicated to the trainee that this is what you have scored. If it goes below this, you will not be taken to the next level. Okay. And they also know that today I am a trainee, tomorrow I'll become a team leader the moment I cross the 2-year threshold and I clear and I'm in the order of merit. So that makes my life easier because I don't need to really create or bring people from my competition. I don't want to be doing that because for me it will be more beneficial if I grow my own people, and that is what I have been doing the last 2-3 years. So
you have a proper evaluation mechanism in place. Only if they fulfill that, if they come out of, if they pass that, only then they are eligible for the next levels.
Yes, there are 3 segments. One is trainee, second is going to the outsource division of manpower, and third is on roll. So you have 10% going to on rolls, and next 20% will go to the off roll. Then rest all are taken to the level of continue as a training. So they know how they fall in the order of merit.
Okay. Mr. Bosekar, would you want to say what is your, how do you, have a greater
we also have
for your apprentices?
we also have a very robust evaluation mechanism. At the towards the it is a quarterly evaluation. Every apprentice, I'm referring to here apprentices now, that how the apprentices progression starts. So for every apprentice, there is a quarterly evaluation, and at the end of the year, the apprenticeship period is 12 months, 1 year. So in the fourth quarter, when the fourth evaluation is happening, we have the looking at all the 4 quarterly reports, which are typically looking at the performance, the attendance, the attitude, ability to learn. So those kind of standard 3A's, aptitude, attitude, attendance. So 3A's are there. There is performance. So all these factors definitely are looked at. And at the end of 12 months, then we take a call that how many apprentices will join the organization on employment. And there are some other apprentices for whatever reasons, if they don't come up to our criteria, they are given the certificate of apprenticeship completion, which itself helps them to find jobs elsewhere. But they will not continue with us. And those people who join our employment, and then through the employment, the further succession planning will be put into place. But this major succession planning itself is from apprenticeship to a job is I will say a major barrier crossing. That we keep harping on their during their training programs, which are continuously given them few classrooms on job. Of course, they are learning. The whole apprenticeship is about on job training, OJT. But along with OJT, we have continuously their classroom session, what are actually called in government typical language as RI classes, related instructions. That is why the government word is related. It is related to the job for which he is hired. And when I say hired means as an apprentice. So related instructions are given. So during this period, we keep on, building up their software issues, as we may say call it, soft skills related sessions. So together, OJT, hard practical knowledge, along with the RI classes, which is classroom sessions, touching upon softer skills, and how the apprentice rather, fares on these parameters on the quarterly evaluation, which is partly by the functional managers under whom they are working, partly from our HR side as a training department. Me and my team is also involved in the performance evaluation, and we take a call whether he joins as an employment. And once he joins as an employee, he becomes the regular employee, and then further planning, there are those standards become applicable.
Sure. Yes. One question coming in is on the dropout rate. It's been seen that there's been a fairly high dropout rate when it comes to apprenticeship. They want to understand what are the measures your organizations have taken to control this dropout. And Nivedita, maybe you could also share your experience as well in your previous organization, that what are the initiatives your organization took to control this dropout rates?
I think one has to understand why do they drop out. Suddenly there is two kinds of people in your organization. One is if you have contract people, okay, those on third party. Then you have this apprentice, kids coming in and joining you. Third is your employees. Okay, there are three kind of employees in your organization who are working from the same purpose. Okay, sometimes you give little bit of leverage to people who are into your training. Okay, the engagement towards these people, how do you engage with these people? Somewhere you lack. And just imagine a person who doesn't know anything has come into organization as a HR person, or the manager, reporting manager needs to understand these kids have just come from colleges, first job, not knowing what is going to happen in their life, absolutely confused. Okay, it's you need to engage with them more than you engage with your people. Also what happens, the reporting manager, if he has three people, the three kinds of people is handling, he's also equally confused, one to whom to give what. So the discussions what takes place in the shop floor, you have to be very sensitive. And also the organization has to be responsible. Certain privileges you are giving to people, those are full-time employees, and you're not giving, it's difficult to give. Let's understand. Okay, I have seen this happening. They feel we're left out. You are saying we are part of you, but we are left out. So that belongingness, they really do not know where do they belong. Do they belong to another organization who is paying them their stipend, or do they belong to this organization? Of course, they are not getting enough work. I tell you, in my organization currently, the new trainees, when they go, I have a huge dropout because they don't get any work. Because they feel they are not trained well. So they get out of boredom, they leave, So, yeah.
So, will it be okay for me to say that, yes, it is more engagement?
Yes.
So, and I would say more structure engagement. There has to be a sense of belongingness that you need to create with these people, right? Okay. Captain Parth, maybe a quick opinion of yours as well on this.
Well, I think the dropouts, like Nivedita rightly said, it is important that the organization deep dives into the reasons. Once the reasons are identified, I think you can really plug in gaps. In my case, for example, as a AGS group, we have three broad entities: AGS, CTL, Secure Value, and ITSL. So the dropout reasons for all were different. Everywhere it was different. But one common thing was the transparency in communication. So that is how I came up with this physical document which says, this is your compensation structure, this is your benefits, that is medical benefit. I cover him on medical insurance, I cover him on the GPA, that is personal accident cover. And it is written in bold, in capital, underlined. He understands what it is, and it is described why. And the third document talks about the career progression. It talks about the percentage where he has to fall in the merit and how it is going to take him to the next level.
So it's a clarity
this was done, dropouts were, sorry.
Okay. So I'm saying it's a clarity of communication. If you define the career plan or succession plan with them, you can generate that engagement with the apprentices, right?
Yeah, it is simple. What's in it for me? Kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Mr. Bhosekar, what's your opinion on this? I mean, you're the most experienced person when it comes to apprenticeship. How do you control your dropout in the apprenticeship?
Apprenticeship, yes, the attrition rate in apprentices is definitely much higher compared to, if you say, employees. Now here we are talking of two categories of people: apprentices and let's say employees. Whether employees are permanent on third-party role and all that, but they're all employees.
Yeah, but let's talk about the apprentices, sir, right now.
No, correct. So I'm saying apprentices attrition rate, of course, is relatively higher, around 25% plus in my organization at least. Generally in manufacturing, same rate. That is what my manufacturing colleagues tell me. How we try to control, and especially in my company, is of course the money makes mayor go. So the stipend rate, the floor rate given by the government is much lower. We of course have fixed up our own rate much higher. Yes, there are overall cost structure which we create, and in that we continuously try to upgrade this stipend level for, I'm talking about apprentices, and when I say worker level, and then once that is higher, obviously for diploma holders is much higher, and then obviously for graduate engineers is much higher. So let us talk of the operator level, which is the largest number, let's say 700 plus, as I said earlier. So one element of routing the arresting attrition is, of course, what kind of the stipend rate you give. Point number one. But more importantly than the financial angle, what we kind of during their the kind of OJT we give them, the kind of he himself is trained in certain job role. Suppose somebody has come as a welder, somebody has come as a machine operator, somebody has come as a fitter. So the kind of technical training OJT we give them is one aspect. We continuously train and counsel our own production engineers, our production managers, how they should deal with the apprentices. So that is the kind of training we have to do for production engineers who are themselves are relatively young lots. 2 years, 3 years experience. They themselves have joined as an apprentice engineer, apprentice diploma holder, and now they are production executives. They are purchase executives and so on. And these apprentices are under them. So we tell them how you take good care of them. After all, there is a human angle involved. If they get the due respect as a person, that really helps. That is point number one. And during their classroom interaction with us, our contact classes, as we call it, RI classes, we keep on, giving them the various kinds of life skills program, so that an apprentice feels that I am taken good care of. So the entire ecosystem, so that even if there is an attraction, oh, you are getting X amount here as an apprentice, we will offer you a job. So for them, the biggest attraction is leave the apprenticeship, join me as a worker, join me as an employee, so that you will start getting PF, bonus, and those kind of things. We tell them that completing apprenticeship and getting that apprenticeship certificate is ultimately going to help you in the long run, because you will, for an operator class, you will become NCVT, you will eligible to appear for the NCVT exam. Then you will join as a skilled worker in any organization, especially government organizations. So it's a composite program.
So what I take from your opinion is that it's definitely it's an ethical treatment or the humane treatment.
Absolutely.
Counseling, regular counseling. It's making people realize that what's in for them with that certificate.
Yes.
How it's career progression, and definitely the compensation also, you said, makes a difference there. Good.
Correct.
I think there are many more questions which are coming in, but we'll have to wrap up the session now because we've really exceeded our time. So anyways, thank you so much for joining us. I think each one of your opinions matters so much. Would definitely encourage more employees to take up apprenticeship. It was very, I would say, insightful and informative. Thank you once again for joining us for the session.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Sumit.
Thank you,
Thank you,
everybody.
Sumit.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very
Thank you,
much,
sir.
and good luck to
Take
all
care.
the participants for engaging apprentices. Good luck.